Good morning, everyone. I am teacher Jarrett, and today we are going to be reading more about insects. Okay? So, today we are going to be reading a fantasy story, and the title of that story is The Hat. The author is Sarah Hughes, and the story is illustrated by Carls Marti. We have a paired read at the end of this story today, and the title of that is Let's Look at Insects. So we can see on this front page that there is an insect with a hat on, right? And it looks like the insect is hopping and the sun is shining. So let's go to the next page and see what's going to happen in this story. Genre fantasy. Essential question. What insects do you know about? How are they alike and different? The Hat by Sarah Hughes. Illustrated by Carls Marti. Chapter 1. The New Hat. 2. Chapter 2. The Wind. 6. Chapter 3. Who can help? 8. Respond to reading. 12. Paired read. Let's look at insects. 13. And STEM, focus on science. Page 16. Okay. So, Chapter 1. The New Hat. Grasshopper hopped out of the shop. The sun was high in the sky. She put on her new hat. So here's a hat shop. We can see there's hats in the window. And there's Grasshopper. Grasshopper is wearing a hat on her head. That's better, Grasshopper said, with a smile. I love my new hat. It's beautiful and it blocks the sun. Grasshopper hopped to the park. Ladybug, ant, and inchworm were there. I love your hat, Ladybug said. The spots are so fancy. Thank you, replied Grasshopper. Here's a ladybug. And Ladybug has a necklace on. And she's telling Grasshopper that the spots on the hat are so fancy, right? That's a nice hat, said Ant. It will shade your face when you work in the sun. Inchworm inched closer. I like your hat too, he said, but it's too big for me. That's right, Grasshopper said with a laugh. So we can see here that Ant said that the hat is nice and it will protect Grasshopper from the sun. And Inchworm said that he liked the hat too, but his head is pretty small, right? So the hat would be too big for his head. Okay, now chapter 2, the wind. Then came a big gust of wind. Grasshopper's hat flew right off her head. Oh no. Look, she didn't have the hat tied on her head, so it blew right off. Oh no, cried Grasshopper. My beautiful hat. I should have tied it on. Now it's flying away. Poor grasshopper, said Ladybug, ant, and inchworm together. Grasshopper needed some help. Chapter 3. Who can help? Who can get my hat? Asked Grasshopper. I'm sorry, I hurt my wings, said Ladybug. I can't fly today. Ant, I know you will help, said Grasshopper. I'm sorry, I can't swim that far, said Ant. So Ladybug hurt her wings, so she cannot fly. And Ant can't swim. Oh no. Inchworm, can you help? Said Grasshopper with a sigh. Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm too small, replied Inchworm. Inchworms are only this big, or this big. They're very small. Grasshopper could hear someone calling her name. Listen, she said. What was that? Grasshopper, I can help, yelled Water Beetle. Water Beetle was swimming to the shore with the new hat. Look, the Water Beetle can swim. So the Water Beetle grabbed Grasshopper's hat and brought it to the shore. Ladybug, Ant, and Inchworm all shouted, all right! Yay! Right? They were excited that Water Beetle was able to help get Grasshopper's hat. Grasshopper hopped with joy. Thank you, she cried. You caught my hat. Now I will tie it tight. I'm glad I could help, said Water Beetle. Grasshopper said, one day I will help you. So you can see Grasshopper is tying the hat onto her head very tightly. So that way, if the wind blows, it won't blow her hat off, right? Because the string will be under her chin holding it tight. And the Water Beetle is happy. And look, Ant, Inchworm, and Ladybug are all giving each other high fives. That means they're excited and happy. And Grasshopper said, one day I will help you to the Water Bug. So maybe someday Water Bug will need help and Grasshopper will be able to help him. Okay, so that's the end of our story. We learned about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different bugs or insects today, right? Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next page. The next page is respond to reading. Yay! Okay, so to respond to reading, we will do a character clue point of view chart today. Okay, and before we do that, I will make a question box on this side for our questions. Pages 8 and 9. How do Ladybug, Ant, and Inchworm feel? How do you know? And 3. What are 2 things that tell you the hat is fiction. Okay, so now we will put this aside and we will work on our chart to retell the story. Character, clue, and point of view. Okay, so now we can start by going to the first page. So the first character we can do is Grasshopper, right? Grasshopper. Okay. So Grasshopper was first. So remember, when we do our character clue point of view chart, we usually start with the character, and then we talk about the point of view, and then we talk about the clue that made us think that, okay? So we can say Grasshopper is happy to have her new hat, right? And so how do we know that Grasshopper is happy to have her new hat? What is our clue? So the clue is that Grasshopper said, I love my new hat, right? So Grasshopper said she loves her new hat. So that means that is a clue for us to know that she is happy, right? Yeah, okay. So now let's do another character. We can name a couple characters for this one. Ant, inchworm, and ladybug, right? So ant, inchworm, and ladybug, and they were happy that Grasshopper a new hat too, right? So they were happy that Grasshopper got a new hat too, right? And how do we know that? What's our clue? Our clue is that they all said nice things about her hat, right? Yeah, so they were all happy that she got her hat too. And now let's go to the next page. When the hat blew off, what did they think? Let's talk about the ant, inchworm, and ladybug. So what was their point of view? We can say that they were sad the hat blew away, right? And how do we know they were sad? We know they were sad because they said, sorry they can't help, right? So if you feel bad about something, you usually say you're sorry, right? So they said, sorry, I hurt my wings, I can't fly today. Or or the ant said, sorry, I can't swim that far. So we can tell that they all felt bad that they couldn't help Grasshopper, right? So, and we know that Grasshopper was sad, right? Because she sighed and she looked sad that she lost her new hat, right? So, the last character we will do is the water bug, okay? Water bug. So, the water bug helped at the end, right? So, we can say that the water bug, he was happy to help, right? And why do we know that he was happy to help? We know he was happy because he said, I'm glad I could help, right? So he said that he was glad he could help. So here in the story now, when we look at our chart, we can see the insects had feelings and what they were thinking, right? And then we can also tell how we knew what they were thinking. So the story didn't tell us that Grasshopper is happy, but the story did tell us that Grasshopper loves her new hat. So we can infer, or we can guess, that she is happy. The story didn't say that the ladybug and ant and inchworm were sad, but they said, sorry, they can't help. And so when they said sorry, that made us infer, or that made us think that they felt bad or they were sad that the hat blew away, right? And they couldn't help her. Okay? So now let's answer some of our questions. Okay. Okay, let's answer these questions. So look at page 5. What does Ant think of the hat? That's page 9, page 7, page 5. So Ant says, that's a nice hat. It will shade your face when you work in the sun. So we can say that Ant thought the hat was nice. He thought it was nice because it would protect Grasshopper when she is working outside, right? Okay, now let's look at the next question. Look at pages 8 and 9. How do ladybug, ant, and inchworm feel? How do you know? So let's look for page 9, 7, 9. You know, I think I'm going to erase this chart, okay? Because we need to be able to see the book to answer the questions. So if you want to keep reviewing the questions or our chart, you can go back in our lesson, okay? Okay. So look at pages 8 and 9. How do ladybug, ant, and inchworm feel? How do you know? So we can tell that they all look worried by the pictures, right? And then we also can see that they're saying they are sorry, right? So if they're sorry, that means they probably feel bad or feel sad. So ladybug, ant, and inchworm all feel bad and sad, right? We know they are sad because they look sad in the pictures, and they say they are sorry that they can't help, right? So look at pages 8 and 9. How do ladybug, ant, and inchworm feel? How do you know? Ladybug, ant, and inchworm all feel bad and sad. We know they are sad because they look sad in the pictures, and they say they are sorry they can't help, right? Yeah. So let's go to the last question. The last question is, what are two things that tell you the hat is fiction? So one thing that tells us the story is fiction is that the insects are talking to each other, right? What is the second thing? Do you wear a hat? Yeah, maybe. Do insects wear hats in real life? No, they don't. So the second thing that tells us the story is fiction is that insects don't wear hats in real life, right? So insects don't wear hats in real life, and they can't buy hats. So we know that it must be fiction, right? Because there's two things that happened in the story that didn't happen in real life, or can't happen in real life. Okay, so that was our respond to reading. Now we're going to read a new story. So the new story's genre is nonfiction. Compare texts. Compare insects in both texts. Let's look at insects. So here's a little girl, and she's looking at some insects crawling around in a case. Insect parts. All insects have a head, a body, and 6 legs. Some have wings, but insects do not have bones. On the outside, their bodies are hard. Their bodies protect them. Jumping insects. Insects move in many ways. Some are very good jumpers. A flea can jump 1 foot. A grasshopper can jump more than 2 feet. Crickets and frog hoppers also jump. How far can you jump? So we can see that the insects have a hard shell. They don't have bones. So if you tap your forehead, that's a bone. If you tap your arm, it feels hard, right? That's a bone inside. But insects don't have bones. They have a hard shell. So for humans, we have a soft skin, right? You can see that, you can pull it, it's soft, right? Insects, it's very hard all over their body. Okay, so that's the difference between insects and humans. We can also see that some insects fly, but some insects jump. So a flea is only maybe that big. It's very, very small, but it can jump a foot. So that's very far. Now, you and I, see, we said, how far can you jump? maybe if we jump, maybe we can jump 2 feet or 3 feet, right? I can maybe jump 2 feet. If you practice, maybe you can jump 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 feet. It just depends on how much you practice, right? So here's a grasshopper, they jump 2 feet. Here's a flea, they can jump 1 foot. Here's a frog hopper, and here's a cricket. They can jump 2. Okay, now let's go to make connections. Which jumping insect did you see in the hat? Did we see the frog hopper? No, we didn't. Did we see the flea? No, we didn't. If you think we saw the grasshopper in the story, raise your hand. Oh, yes, very good. We did see the grasshopper in the story The Hat, right? There it is. There's the grasshopper. So now let's go to a focus on science. Focus on science. Purpose: to compare insects. What to do? Step 1, write a list of the insects in the hat. Okay, let's make a list. So there was a grasshopper, a ladybug, an ant, an inchworm, and a water bug, right? So that's the list, step 1. Step 2, think about the insects in the story. Look at the pictures and reread the text. Who has wings? So if we look, ladybug has wings, right? Ladybug is the only insect who has wings, right? The grasshopper might have wings when it jumps, but it cannot fly like the ladybug can. So we can go back to our question. Who has wings? Step 3, circle the names of the insects that have wings. Which insects in the hat have wings? So we know that the ladybug has wings, right? We can also say that the grasshopper has wings too, right? But the grasshopper doesn't fly. The grasshopper just jumps, right? So those are the 2 insects that have wings. The ant and the inchworm and the water bug don't have any wings. Okay? So when you look outside, you can look around and try to find bugs that are flying, insects that are flying. Maybe a grasshopper or a bee, right? Or a ladybug, or maybe some other insects that are not in the story. Okay? And when you point out, when you see those insects, you can show them to your mother and your father and tell them, look, that is an insect that has wings that can fly. Okay? So now we have one more page and we are going to answer some questions and then we are done for today. Okay? Okay, so let's answer these questions. Who is the main character in the story The Hat? Who could not help Grasshopper? Okay, so we know that we know that the main character in the story is Grasshopper, right? And who could not help Grasshopper? We know that Ladybug, Ant, and Inchworm could not help Grasshopper, right? Right, so we know because Ladybug had a hurt wing, so she couldn't fly. An ant couldn't swim, and Inchworm was too small, right? Yeah. So let's go to our next question. What was Grasshopper's problem? How did she solve it? Who helped Grasshopper solve the problem? Okay, so Grasshopper's problem was that her hat blew off in the wind, right? How did she solve her problem? She solved her problem by asking for help. And who helped Grasshopper solve the problem? Waterbug helped Grasshopper solve the problem, right? So, what was Grasshopper's problem? How did she solve it? And who helped Grasshopper solve the problem? So we know that Grasshopper's problem was that her hat blew off in the wind. She solved her problem by asking for help. And Waterbug helped Grasshopper solve the problem, right? Okay, now we have one more question for today, and then we are done, all right? So let's think really hard and answer this question together, okay? What happened first, then next, and last? So this is the way we used to retell stories, right? So now let's do it for this story. So first, Grasshopper got a new hat, right? Then Grasshopper showed her friends, and they all said they liked it. Next, the hat blew off, and none of Grasshopper's friends could help her. Finally, Waterbug helped Grasshopper get her hat, and everyone was happy, right? So let's read this together because that was kind of long. What happened first, then next? Oh, we have a new word here. Finally. Finally is like another word for last. So we said first, Grasshopper got a new hat, right? Let's go and look at the story. So first, Grasshopper got a new hat, right? Then Grasshopper showed her friends, right? And they all said they liked it. Next, the hat blew off, and none of Grasshopper's friends could help her, right? Because they hurt their wing, or they were too small, or they couldn't swim. But finally, Waterbug helped Grasshopper get her hat, and everyone was happy, right? Yeah. So that is how we could retell the story using the sequence of events, okay? So that is all of our lesson for today. It was a long lesson, but we learned a lot of different things, right? So now it's time for me to say bye-bye. Okay. Make sure you take some time this week to look at insects and see if you can find some of the insects that we talked about in this story. Or you can maybe find some insects we talked about this week too, right? Like the fly, yeah, or a butterfly or a caterpillar, right? Yeah. So it's time for me to go now, but I will see you next time. Okay? All right, bye-bye.